Hello and welcome. Here is your global news update for February 4th, 2026. Kicking off our top stories today, the partial shutdown of the U.S. government is over. Lawmakers have managed to pass a short-term spending bill to get things back up and running. Meanwhile, all eyes are on Abu Dhabi, where incredibly high-stakes peace talks between Russia and Ukraine are officially underway, with the United States stepping in to mediate. And in North Africa, a developing story, as the assassination of a major political figure in Libya is sparking real fears of renewed instability across the entire region. So let's dive into our first section. We're looking at today's major geopolitical flashpoints, where diplomacy is being tested under some extreme pressure. All right, so these negotiations in Abu Dhabi marked the second round of talks to try and end the war in Ukraine, which has been going on for nearly 4 years now. You have delegations from both Russia and Ukraine meeting with high-level American envoys, specifically Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, who are trying to broker a deal. But these talks are happening under a very dark cloud. Just hours before they began, Russia launched a massive aerial assault, hitting Ukraine's power grid with hundreds of drones and missiles right in the middle of a bitter cold snap. President Volodymyr Zelensky didn't mince words, calling it a blatant violation of a recently brokered energy truce. As you can imagine, a deep divide still separates the two sides. And as you can see here, the core disagreement really boils down to one thing: territory. Ukraine is standing firm, refusing to cede the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Russia, on the other hand, is demanding full control of the Donbass before any settlement can happen. That right there is the main hurdle. Now shifting our focus to Libya, where another event is threatening regional stability. Saif el-Islam Gaddafi, son of the late leader Muammar Gaddafi, has been assassinated at his residence. This timeline really shows his comeback. Since his release from prison in 2017, he'd become a pretty significant political player again, even seen as a potential presidential candidate. His death now creates a really dangerous power vacuum. And speaking of complex peace efforts, let's turn to the Middle East. The U.S.-led peace plan for Gaza is now moving into its second phase. It involves 3 key steps. First, demilitarization of the region. Second, setting up a technocratic Palestinian governing committee that's basically a group of non-political experts. And third, a huge reconstruction effort. Now, reports suggest Hamas has agreed to give up its governing role, but here's the critical sticking point. The group has not agreed to disarm. Okay, let's pivot now and head over to the United States. We're going to focus on how that government shutdown ended and some major changes happening with fiscal policy. Just look at this number, 217 to 214. That's how close the vote was in the House of Representatives to get this spending bill passed. A margin that thin really highlights just how tense and deeply divided the political climate is right now. So how does this deal actually work? Well, it's structured in 2 parts. Most federal agencies are now funded through the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. But the Department of Homeland Security is only funded through February 13th. That very short extension is designed to force some intense negotiations on border security and immigration. It wasn't just about government funding either. Significant tax changes are coming into effect with what's being called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. The big takeaway? It makes the 2017 tax cuts permanent. On the screen, you can see the new marginal tax rates for a single filer in 2026, ranging from 10% up to 37% across 7 different income brackets. And that's not all. This act also introduces some other key provisions, like new deductions for workers. There's a no tax on tips deduction for up to $25,000 and a no tax on overtime deduction for up to $12,500. At the same time, it repeals most of the clean energy credits from the Inflation Reduction Act and redirects that money toward expanding rural opportunity zones. All right, from fiscal policy, we're now shifting gears to the growing friction between big tech and state power, focusing on a major investigation into the social media platform X. And this whole situation really gets to the heart of a huge modern debate: can a single nation's laws actually regulate a global AI platform? What's happening right now between the French government and X is becoming a critical test case for this very question. This isn't just a theoretical debate. French authorities recently raided the Paris offices of X. Their investigation is centered on its AI chatbot, Grok, and they've laid out a list of some very serious allegations. They include complicity in distributing child sexual abuse images, creating sexually explicit deepfakes, spreading Holocaust denial, and even manipulating algorithms for foreign interference. The platform's chairman, Elon Musk, has now been summoned for questioning. We've got more global updates coming up in just a moment. And to make sure you stay informed and don't miss future reports, now is a great time to like and subscribe to the channel. Okay, let's talk money. We're going to take a data-driven look at the global economy, which really seems to be in a state of transition. The key economic data from this past January really paints a mixed picture. So in the US, private sector job growth is slowing down. But over in China, the service sector is actually accelerating. Meanwhile, in the Eurozone, there's some good news as inflation is easing, dropping to 1.7%. So, how have global markets reacted to all this? Well, it really depends on where you look. After the shutdown ended, US markets like the Dow Jones and S&P 500 actually hit record highs. But it's a different story in Asia, where major markets, including Japan's Nikkei 225 and South Korea's Kospi, saw pretty significant losses. And now let's run through a few other notable global events in our World Briefs section. In the world of science, researchers at MIT have developed a new, non-invasive tool using ultrasound that could help explain the origins of consciousness. And on the environmental front, a new study finds that melting ice from West Antarctica is weakening a key carbon sink in the Southern Ocean. A 5.9 magnitude earthquake has struck eastern Myanmar. So far, there are no immediate reports of major damage. And back in the United States, a public health crisis is emerging, with a measles outbreak confirmed at a Texas ICE facility that is currently housing 400 children. That concludes this global news update. Another update will follow in 24 hours.